Good morning, everyone. This morning we are going to begin with our opening congregational song, which is on page 107 of the pink book, Let There Be Peace on Earth. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able, and join in singing. And much thanks to Mick Kim on our keyboards. 107. Welcome to the First Existentialist congregation of Atlanta. We are a philosophically based spiritual community founded on existential philosophy and feminist principles. We make our spiritual home in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muscogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Our opening activity today will be another movement experience. So today we are going to pay attention to another of the fluids of the fluid system as considered by Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen in her body of work called Body-Mind Centering. There are, according to her, 6 different types of fluids in the body, and we have done cellular fluid in the past. Today we're going to do synovial fluid. So I would invite people who are interested, if you would like to remain seated, that's fine, but if you'd like to stand, get into a place where you feel free to move about. And our synovial fluids are those fluids that lubricate our joints, and they are jiggly and bouncy. So we're just going to do one of the Qigong exercises called Shake the Tree, which is just to bounce and let all of our joints be loose and jiggly, and as we're doing this, what's already happening, some people are smiling and laughing. That also helps to be a mood improver, shall we say. And as we're doing our Shake the Tree synovial fluid dance, we're going to be dancing for joy with the latest news out of Las Vegas. Yeah! I'll leave it to you to decide what that means. And getting our bodies prepared to go back to the polls one more time. On the way here, I was driving and passed this yard sign that said, "Vote some more." So, now that our synovial fluids have activated all throughout our body, we can have a seat again and let that experience reverberate throughout today's celebration of life. My name is Patton White, and I will be facilitating today's celebration of life. And do we have any newcomers who might be here for the first time or have, yes, would you like to let us know who you are and how you came to be here?
Sure, yeah, I'm Jessica Straley. I live out in Stone Mountain. Have never found a church home in the Atlanta area and found you guys on the internet. So I would come visit.
All right, well, Jessica, you say? So, anyone else? Yes?
I'm Shannon. I live over in West End, on the west side, and same kind of story. I found you guys online. I had a church home like 15 years ago, and I haven't been in a while, and kind of just had that calling again to like connect a little more spiritually. So here I am.
All right, well, welcome. My mom's a neighbor of you. She's in Westview, near West End. If you take a look at the bulletin, we have a connection card that you can fill out and tear off and place into the collection plate later on. If you're interested in learning more about us, we have a weekly e-blast that goes out either on Monday or Tuesday and on Thursday or Friday. Talking about what's happened and what's coming up. And then we have a monthly newsletter that's edited by Jan Lister. And yeah, so if you'd like to keep abreast of what's going on here, we'd love to have you join our e-blast list. All right, let's see. Any birthdays or anniversaries to celebrate? Yes, ma'am, what's your thing?
My name's Nancy White. I'm from
Do
Texas.
tell. I know it's not your birthday.
No, it is my grandfather's 161st birthday. He was born November 13th, 1861. So we've got a whole lot of knowledge in our family. But your great-grandfather, he was Duval West.
Mm-hmm. Born during the Civil War.
That's right.
Jan?
Well, I have a new goddaughter, and a godson, and your great godson. Yes, that's it. He was born on Friday. And this is like really kind of special to us because Libby, my goddaughter, her mom had 3 girls. And our friend Ellie had 2 girls, Rachel had a girl, Sarah had a girl, Jan had 3 girls, I had girls, like we all had girls. And now we've got this little boy, and we're all like, why do we do this? Anyway, he weighed in at 8 pounds, 10 ounces. Oh, was he Frank Otto Broussard? I haven't seen him yet, but I did, they sent me a picture, and he looks like my goddaughter, Libby. So I'm very excited. And we're all just, I told you last week that we were on baby watch. Well, he came.
Did I hear someone say something?
Not at the moment.
Oh,
They're
okay.
queued up, not for today.
Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and do another congregational song. The good news is you don't have to change your page from the last one. It's also on 107. Imagine. Please rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able. The pink book. Thank you, Nick. As we were getting ready to start this morning, Nick was playing on the piano. It reminded me of the old days of NPR when Marion McPartland used to have the radio show, and I just loved listening to her playing and musings and stuff. Let's see. If you have a community announcement that you'd like to share at some point, please write it down and pass it up to me before we are ending today, and I will share those. Marcia, it is time for our minister moment. Would you like to come forward?
It's great to see everybody. Great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Great to see you here this morning. I know that a number of you came in a little bit late. I think that has to do with, I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that it's cold and we have a little trouble trying to get our blood and stuff, going so that we can get moving and get around. But
What's
I'm
going on?
glad that first
Fall festival. Oh, cool.
no,
Right now.
Sorry. But I'm glad that you made the effort, that you got up and that you came. I'm very encouraged by the fact that so many came out and voted.
Yes.
And that's on both sides of the aisle. I mean, even though I'm glad that it, from a personal level, I'm glad that things went, in a way that I'm more inclined, but at the same time, it's very important that everybody recognize how important it is that we get out and vote. It is a right that if we take lightly, we may lose. So please be sure that you vote in the runoff and in every election that you have the opportunity to vote. It is a privilege. It is a right. And make yourself knowledgeable about who is running and what they stand for, instead of just voting a party ticket or something. It's very important that we do that. So the other thing that is that Thanksgiving is coming up, and there are an awful lot of hungry people in the metropolitan Atlanta area and everywhere. But please remember to bring food for the food barrel, and if you have some extra money to send it to the Atlanta Community Food Bank or one of the other organizations that feed the hungry, one of the organizations that are particularly active, during the Thanksgiving time. And remember, each of those that are not as fortunate as we are to not worry about where our meal is coming from. So, but thank you for being here. It's great to see every one of you. I just want to hug every one of you here today. So, y'all stay warm, toasty warm, and have a good, safe week.
Yeah. At this time, we're going to move into our time of silence. This is a time for us to be in community with one another for a few minutes and to use that time to simply be. Our next congregational song will be also from in the Pink Book on page 77, a song of peace. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. At this time, we'll go ahead and open up the floor for people to share personal joys and sorrows. If I can have somebody pass around the microphone.
This is can y'all hear me okay with this band? Alright, so this is a John Fromer tune I'm going to play today. I collected this, like a lot of my music I collect from my partner Elise. And this one's from John Fromer, who's a union activist, but this is one of his sort of anthems. And it's since Reverend What? Oh, here you go. Since, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Since Reverend Sorrells is going to be talking about inner peace, I imagine this would be good. It's called Give Us the Peace of the Mountain. Give us the peace. great legacy.
Thank you, Nick. So our featured speaker today is Reverend Kimble Sorrells. Reverend Kimble Sorrells is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ with a ministry in contemplative practices focused on equipping us with the peace and resolve to be justice makers in the world. And Kimble has spoken here many times. Their partner is Shelby, who sends her regards. And when I asked earlier about any parenting joys to share, Kimble said fall stuff, like Halloween, and leaves something. Oh yeah, apple picking, that's right. All right, so without any further ado, please welcome Kimble Sorrells.
Good morning. Let's Shelby, will you hear me with that? Okay. Yes, Shelby does say hello. As parents of toddlers, things are usually decided in the moment. And it was cold. So she did want to send y'all her well wishes, even though she wasn't able to join us this morning. So, when I agreed to speak this Sunday, I looked at my calendar and I said, oh yeah, that date looks open. And then later I realized, this is the Sunday after an election week. And I'll admit to you, I was a bit hesitant about that because politics and elections can be very challenging, especially for any of us who belong to communities that face oppression. And of course, add to that reality that most of us have people in our lives who we deeply disagree with on politics. Perhaps that's family, co-workers, maybe friends. And so we add all this into the mix, and so not only does politics evoke strong emotions for us, it can also cause tension and rifts in our interpersonal relationships. So these are contentious and tumultuous times. And it seems almost as though in recent years that tension and sometimes vitriol is at a new level than it has been. So what I'll share with you today then is not the reflections of someone who is an expert. I certainly had times where political shifts have sort of knocked me on my rear end, where I felt defeated. And despite the Reverend in front of my name, I have definitely had times where I have been snippy with people over politics, where I have spoken from a place of anger rather than a place of calm opposition, or where I've just resorted to posting snarky social media posts rather than actually any sort of thoughtful engagement. Still, when I am my best self, in times of these political tensions, the first thing I do that I find helpful is that I have to attend to my own self-care and wellness. So before I can attend to any larger issues or deep spiritual questions, I just need to take care of my body and my emotional regulation, right? If I am not well, if I am not grounded and centered, I am not in a place to be diving into politics. So for me, this does mean leaning to my spiritual practices, using tools that help me to feel more calm, using things that help to regulate our nervous system, right? For me personally, I utilize my spiritual practices, my meditation practices, or contemplative practices to feel connected to my sense of the divine, what I would call God. And doing this, I allow myself to feel loved and nurtured, to sort of feed myself spiritually. Others may find that going into nature does this for them, right? Still others might find connecting to loved ones, spending time with family or friends, Going and playing with your dog or a child might be the thing that helps you to sort of regulate that nervous system and come back into a place where you feel calm and at ease, where you feel nurtured or better. So one of my spiritual teachers talks about this. She says, often tells us, drink as you pour. Drink as you pour, right? Because we need to nourish ourselves emotionally and spiritually to do that work of justice in the world. For me, this also means being really practical and attending to my emotions in the moment. So developing that self-awareness of seeing what's going on with me and being able to attend to that. So I'm learning to, as I get older, recognize what is activating for me and to set limits when I am able around that. So for me, this past Tuesday evening, I did not watch election results come in. There was nothing I could do at that point to influence anything. I did vote, okay, so I voted and I walked away. There's nothing I could do to change the outcome of that result. So for me, just sitting and watching and waiting and staying up later than I would just leads to anxiety and stress and sleep deprivation that for me isn't helpful. So I'm not saying you should or shouldn't watch the election results, which by the way are coming up again. You have a chance to vote again. We'll continue to say that in a runoff. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't watch the results. I am saying that all of us have different things that are activating for us, right? And so it's important for us to recognize those things and to take care of ourselves. Maybe sitting up and watching election results makes you feel alive, and if that's great for you, then great. Otherwise, find something that helps you to feel calm. Another practical reality for me is social media, or really any media. I think it's worth asking ourselves in these times what media we consume is helpful. What leads to emotional wellness and spiritual wellness. We want to be informed, right? We want to be informed. We want to make sure we're educating ourselves, of course. And it may be that certain things are not helpful. And if that's the case, then we might set boundaries around that. Be that either by limiting our time that we spend engaging in certain media, or with various media outlets, or also the wonderful godsend of unfollow. Unfollowing a page, unfollowing your Facebook friends. You can still go look at this stuff if you want to, but it doesn't show up unless you go looking for it. It's a great thing. So we can find these things that are activating for us and make choices to protect our own wellness. So of course, obviously we can't control everything that we are exposed to, right? So that's why going back to the spiritual practices or wellness practices that we go to, right? If things come along that do kind of knock us off of our center, going to those practices that increase our wellness. So finding peace in political times, though, I realize I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, as they say, but it's not just about our own inner peace, but about cultivating peace in our society and in as much as we are able to in those interpersonal relationships as well. I think as spiritual or ethical people, it isn't just enough to be at peace. We have to create it. And I think it's important here to point out that the work of justice is larger than politics or elections. Regardless of an election outcome, and this week's results were sort of a mixed bag, some shifts overnight, but a mixed bag. The work that we have is the same. We work for people's rights, we work for justice, we work for access to food, housing, and all the basic needs for all people. Bentley Huggins, who is a local activist, some of you may know them, posted something that caught my eye after, I think I will say, a local result that maybe was less desirable for some of us. And they wrote, "A lot of righteous anger and heartbreak being felt in Georgia tonight. The good news is that our power has never been limited to electoral politics. We still have people to protect, neighbors to feed, and futures to dream." And I think this is very true. There is much more to do to be peacemakers and justice makers that is beyond politics. A friend of mine, very wisely, a clergy colleague friend of mine, very wisely pointed out, elections are not the end, they're the beginning. Elections show us who it is that we're supposed to hold accountable. Elections are not the end. So even if it's a result that you agree with or are happy about, elections are not the end. Furthermore, I think as we focus on these pieces of what we can do, so in doing that, we're leaning into our self-agency. When we lean into that self-agency, the things that we can do, that also goes back to that inner peace. That increases our own wellness, right? Because we are increasing our peace and resilience. At times it can feel overwhelming, right? Like there's so much that needs to be done in the world. What can I even do? But to focus on those pieces that I can do helps to not only make a change, but to also increase my sense of power and empowerment and resiliency. There's a teaching in the Buddhist tradition about dealing with the hurts of the world, and imagine trying to walk around on the world barefoot and how it would hurt your feet. You can't pave the whole world with leather, but you can put on sandals on your feet. So I can do those things that I can do, both for myself and for others, to create change. So as a parent who worries about gun violence, for example, I am in awe, honestly, of those who have turned their anger and at times their grief into action. About sometime, I think within the last year or so, this lawsuit came out that those who lost children in the Sandy Hook elementary shooting sued the gun manufacturer Remington, resulting in a $73 million settlement. So this isn't a political move per se, but while this doesn't solve the problem, it was a pretty significant victory in pressuring companies to be more responsible. And it does show the ways that we can use a whole variety of tactics and whatever power we have to push for change, right? It's not just elections that we use to become peacemakers and justice makers. So as spiritual and ethical people, we need to cultivate peace. So we start with ourselves, yes, and then we work and take that outward into society. Still, perhaps the most challenging for me at least, is to cultivate peace, or at least a peaceful disposition, with relationships where political tension arise. It almost feels like a little bit of a comical irony that we seem to have a whole slew of familial holidays right on the tail end of elections. It's like, let's get a bunch of people who probably don't agree with each other anymore, stick them in a room together, maybe add some alcohol, and then let's just see what happens. Right? One of my teachers said, no one knows how to push your buttons like your family because they made them. So how do we engage with people whose opinions we may disagree with at best, or at worst, find just frankly harmful? How do we maintain our own integrity of spirit while holding firm in our opposition? Many spiritual traditions have wrestled with this idea of relationship with one's adversary. In my own faith tradition, in the Christian tradition, you'll hear passages where Jesus instructs his followers to love their enemies, pray for those who would persecute you, or to turn the other cheek when harmed. Buddhist teachings involve cultivating compassion for those who you might find difficult or hurtful. There are many spiritual teachings on this matter, and I think it's important to note that as we apply them, it's not really a black and white application. It's a nuanced dance with these teachings. So for starters, I don't think that engaging with those who maybe are hurtful or who we see as opponents to our own wellness should be a spiritual requirement. It's not a requirement. think that's one thing that, growing up in the Christian churches, this idea like you have to do this, you have to forgive people, and I don't think that that's true. Rather, I think that it's something that can be helpful in the right time and the right space. So again, I think this goes back to learning to recognize where we are emotionally and being wise with what we engage in and how we engage in it. So if we're in a good place, engaging with a difficult or perhaps even someone who we think of as harmful or hurtful, it might be transformative. Certainly for them, or possibly even for our own healing. This is your dance play. So on a personal level, if I am aiming to extend compassion to those who I would consider my adversary, in doing this and deepening my own peace by letting go of anger or resentment and hatred, whether or not this engagement with them has any transformative effect on them, it may offer me healing to release the harm that's been done to me. So it's not about saying that this is okay. It's not about saying that their behavior or their actions are okay, but rather that I won't let this harm live in me and take ownership of my peace or wholeness. I won't let hatred be the center of my being. I can oppose someone, I can resist them, I can try to stop them without being ruled by that hatred. So in this way, these spiritual teachings are not about complacency, rather, or accepting injustice, but about sort of a defiance and nonviolent resistance. This teaching, often that turn the other cheek, is one that I think is really particularly interesting. The culture of it was, in Jesus saying this, you would have to present the other cheek. It's making it so that the person isn't offering you a backhanded slap, which was what they did to someone lesser than them. So in offering this, you're basically saying to them, I am your equal. Come at me like you would your equal. I am not your servant. In this way, it's almost more like the work of Martin Luther King or those who have used nonviolent resistance to confront injustice without abandoning one's own sense of peace, values, or integrity. On a more practical level, when we are able to focus on addressing the issue of injustice, I think this is more effective, where we're focusing on that issue rather than necessarily being consumed by our anger or our hatred. Still, beyond just kind of how I allow it to release that hatred or be a sense of healing for me, still I do think that at times it may be transformative for people to engage with them and try to extend that peace in relationship. We know that when we see someone as a person, as a human being, rather than as some sort of an identity or label, it makes us less biased towards them. So this is part of why those of us who are LGBTQ activists have often been very visible, right? To help people see our humanity. To see that at the end of the day, I am a person, I am a human being with inherent worth and dignity just like you. It makes it a lot harder to hate someone when you know them as a person. The challenge for me is to turn that around. That I too am trying to see the humanity in people that I would label as other, or as opponent, or as a certain political party. If we as a society want to make strides towards peace, I do think that we have to try to see each other's common humanity. Again, I'm not saying that we accept harmful behavior, rather, in order to cultivate peaceful interactions and in turn a more peaceful society, we have to be, as I say, being the change we want to see in the world. Being the one who starts from common humanity. That's the change that I want to see, which means I have to start there too. I think it's fair to say that there are some people who are just hateful, nasty people. I say as I tell you not to label people. But I'm not naive enough to think that everyone is going to meet me halfway. And in trying to see, at the same time, as trying to see my political opponents as human beings with need, I have recognized that I think for many people, their political views, things that I find objectionable, often come from some sort of an unmet need, a hurt, a fear, something going on in their life. So, for example, there are some who perhaps vote in a way that I don't like, that maybe they think that this will genuinely help their financial situation. They are struggling. They're struggling, they're facing the inflation that we're dealing with right now, for example. And they think that by voting a certain way, or maybe they blame it on this candidate or that candidate, that that's genuinely going to change their situation. Perhaps they are in labor jobs that are becoming obsolete. They have no way to really access education or change their situation. I'm finding that if I'm able to engage with people as individuals, we might find that there is things behind what it is, there's needs behind how it is that they are moving around in the world. And in doing this, perhaps we can start to find common solutions. Perhaps as we engage in these relationships, we might also even change hearts and minds and their views towards us. In his 1998 book, Clandestine Relationships, and that is a play on words, you'll see why. Book subtitle, A Black Man's Odyssey with the Ku Klux Klan. Daryl Davis, in this book, details his activism directly with those who are active Klan members. As a black man, he sought out friendships with members of the KKK, starting with the Imperial Wizard in Maryland. In doing this, he befriended them. He got to understand them and their fears. He found out what it was that fueled those fears. And he allowed them to get to know him. He helped them reason through their prejudice. Over time, he is attributed as being either directly or indirectly responsible for disrobing over 200 Klansmen. The transformation in these people occurred because Davis was willing to engage with them as human beings, to start from seeing their common humanity. This isn't always the case, right? Some people are not going to change, and some people will be hateful. So engaging with people, if that's something that you feel like you're in a place to do and you feel called to do, that doesn't mean that you should be a doormat, right? Or not have boundaries. I have at times had to distance myself from people, or to no longer allow them to be a part of my life in a very direct and intimate way because they were harmful, because they were harmful to me, to my family, to queer people, to trans people. I don't hate them, but I do set boundaries. It's okay to set boundaries with people. It's okay also to be smart. If you do engage with people who may be harsh towards you, to be practical and to take steps to do so safely, or as safely as you can. Still, I do think often we do see these small-scale changes in hearts and minds and lives. I know I've seen it in relationships with mine, people that years ago would have told me I'm going to hell, and now have shifted and have started to understand what it means to be a queer person, and that's just part of life. And so people have changed. So perhaps if we do have the ability to, if we're in that place of calm, stable engagement, if we have that sense of calling that this is something that we want to do, perhaps engaging with our opponents can be transformative. Or if that's not something that we desire to do, I do believe that as we are able to simply internally release that sense of anger or hatred towards others, it at least allows us to hold our own inner sense of peace and to navigate these sort of tumultuous political world and these tense relationships from a more peaceful disposition, a more grounded, peaceful position. I think it's almost an understatement to say that politics these days often feels like a sort of a tumultuous ocean, right? But I think as people of peace, we can cultivate peace even in difficult or challenging, contentious times. In her song, The Eye, Brandi Carlile sings, "You can dance in the hurricane, but only if you're standing in the eye." As spiritual and peace-building people, we can use our tools to cultivate peace in the storm. We can use our tools to allow ourselves to sort of be deeply centered. That sort of deep, peaceful centeredness is as though we are in the eye of the storm, right? So that whatever is going on around me, that's outside of me. We can create peace for ourselves, for our societies, and even perhaps with those interpersonal relationships, maybe even those that are a little bit challenging or tense. Perhaps even with a bit of resilience, we can even dance in the hurricane that comes and goes as life passes. So as we continue our time today, my hope is that we'll find a place, a space to touch into that deep stillness, to get a connection to that sense of peace, to find that place of spiritual or emotional nourishment and wellness this morning. Take it all in and hold on to it, because tomorrow we have work to do. We have work to do in the days to come. We have work to do in elections to come, but we also have work to do regardless, whatever election results may be in our future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimble. I was right there with you on election night. I could not watch a single minute of the returns. So I went out to dinner with a friend. All right, so we have a few community announcements to share. Next Sunday, November 20th, after the celebration of life, join our Thanksgiving kiddish/potluck that is being put on by the Membership Guild. Snacks, salads, main and side dishes welcome, so please bring something to share. Mary, do we know, is the plan to do that outside?
Right now, that's the plan.
Okay.
Does that take the place of our Thanksgiving, our usual Thanksgiving?
Yes. There will not be a Thanksgiving gathering here on Thanksgiving itself.
Do we bring it inside if it's really cold out?
I'll let folks decide that outside of this forum. Mary also wanted to share that there's an event on November 18th and 19th, 2 days of sustainable Native American lifeways. And on the 18th, it's an outdoor activity at the Atlanta Outdoor Activity Center. And on the 19th at Arabia Mountain Nature Preserve. And if you want more information about that, I'll let Mary share this with you after the celebration of life. And that's the same thing that Patrice posted or shared. All right. So our closing congregational song is in the new book, which again is alphabetical. It is in the P for Peace train. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. While we're up, let's stay up. Our closing activity comes from the lymph fluids and our lymph system, as we know. Hopefully, it's our defense mechanism within the body, and lymph fluid is very direct and specific and clear. And so we're going to do an activity called Bringing Down the Heavens from Qigong. And we're going to really find that sense of clarity, to bring energy into our lives, to go out and do exactly what Kimble was saying, continuing the march towards justice. So we just extend the arms out to the side, and up overhead, and then bringing chi down into our bodies. And once again, brushing out and drawing down the heavens. And one more. Bringing strength and resilience and clarity and peace. Have a wonderful rest of your day today, and we will see you next time. All of our Sundays are a little bit different for our first-timers. We have different speakers, different facilitators doing what I was doing, and different musicians. So please come a few times to see who we are. Thanks so much for coming today. Bye-bye.